ॐ वागर्ताविव सम्पृक्तौ वागर्तप्रतिपत्तये जगतः पितरौ वन्दे पार्वती परमेश्वरौ वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम् सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां हरिः ओम्। अद्य पञ्चमकक्षायां सर्वेषां स्वागतम्। अस्माभिः प्रथमकक्षायां किञ्चित् पृष्ठभूमिकां स्थापितमासीत्। अनन्तरं कक्षात्रयं यावत् अधिष्ठानसम्बन्धिनविषयाः, वेदः कथं परमप्रमाणः भवेत्, प्रमाणं भवेत्, वेदवाङ्मये के विषयाः सन्ति इति द्वितीयकक्ष्या। सर्वं विष्णुमयं जगत्, नो चेत् लॉ ऑफ कंसर्वेशन ऑफ डिविनिटी एतस्मिन् विषये गतसप्ताहे किञ्चित् अस्माभिः चर्चा कृता। अत्र बहवः प्रश्नाः आगताः गतसप्ताहस्य वीक् 3 and the week 4, तृतीयसप्ताहस्य गतसप्ताहस्य बहवः प्रश्नाः आगताः, उत्तमाः प्रश्नाः। केचनाः अहं स्वीकृत्य किञ्चित् उत्तरं दातुं प्रयत्नं करिष्यामि। अवशिष्टं विषये वयं चिन्तयामः। सर्वेषाम् उत्तरं दातव्यमेव, तदर्थं किं करणीयम् इति अहं चिन्तयामि। Okay, so welcome to this session. We will, as usual, start with the questions. Quite a few questions have come. I have taken some of them. Of course, some of them we will anyway get answered in today and in the future session. So I have kept them aside. But amongst many questions, I have taken some of them, which we will see. So in the Vedic repository, there were quite a few questions. We'll see some of them. There was one remark. One slide says Atharva Veda, another slide says Atharvana Veda. There's a confusion, so I must apologize. Both are same actually. Atharva and Atharvana both are samana pada eva. So both are same. So don't get confused. That's a minor point. Somebody asked that question. How do we know that there were 21 shakas if they are not available now? This was another question. So my question is, how do we know that Jesus Christ lived? How do we know that there was a city called Dwaraka, which Krishna was there? No, actually, none of them are available now. So the way we know all these is there is a methodology. You know, you look for evidences, you look for multiple evidences, you corroborate the evidences and come to a conclusion logically. This is what it is. So that's the same method here also. There are ways by which we know there were 21 shakas. There are cross references, there are some portions which are mentioned in other and so on. So although they are not available now, we have been able to come to a conclusion fairly logically that 21 shakas maybe in a particular branch of Veda. So this was one question that somebody asked. I have heard that more than half of Manusmriti is mal edited or destroyed during invasions and conquests of India. How can we trust the genuineness of these mantras? Now, genuineness of these mantras has nothing to do with the header, whether it is Manusmriti, whether it is Yajnavalkya Smriti, whether it is Narada Smriti. I think you should take out all that. Don't waste your time unless you are a historian. The genuineness of the mantras are only as good as how useful they are. In fact, if some mantras are so good, they are very profound in what they are saying, I think we should not worry about these issues, because at the end of the day, our idea is not to find out whether X is genuine, Y are genuine, but we want to understand whether a message or an idea which is given is genuinely useful to us. So if you take such an approach, in fact, that's a personal approach I take. I dismiss all these questions because these are all unnecessary distractions in my mind. Actually, I don't, worry whether Mahabharata war happened. I mean, there is a Shraddha also. There's another way. You trust comes, as I told you, through Shraddha. If you don't want to have Shraddha, even then, I would say don't worry whether Mahabharata existed, whether Krishna existed, whether Arjuna existed. If you think Bhagavad Gita is giving you some good ideas, please use it. I think that's a very practical way of making use of this repository rather than getting distracted needlessly on these. Of course, historians have eke out a living out of this. Sometimes they create controversies and make a living. For them, it may be a question. So, at least for me, these questions are not very important. The mantras and their insights are very profound. Therefore, I think we must go with that. Somebody asked, why do you chant Shanti Mantra? It's also a good question. They are asking, why do you chant Shanti Mantra? In fact, this is the practice you will find in all Vedic chanting. There will be a Shanti Mantra. So the question is, why do we chant? See, we must understand. I will take a simple example. Let's say I want to achieve something. It's a target. The target for a student may be the final exam. The target for a project director is the launch of the project. The target for somebody is to finish a certain thing on a particular day, and so on. Let us look at these examples. So today is the day. Today is the exam day. Today is the project launch day. Or today is a very important meeting in which your CEOs come, and this is finally going to be all fixed. How do you like today morning? There is a cloud burst. Whole city is flooded. Everything comes to a grinding halt. There's a tsunami. There's an earthquake. Or that everything was fine. Suddenly there was a flash strike or a hartal or a band or some violence. Some two groups, fought on the streets, and then hearing happened. There are a whole lot of events like that. Or there is a third possibility. I get up today morning with a severe headache. I get into fever. I get vomiting. The temperature is 103. Now, these things are not utopian. These things, sometimes happen. I'm not pessimistic. I'm saying such things do sometimes happen and come in the way. So these are called Adi Daivikam, Adi Bhautikam, and Adhyatmikam. You getting fever or a stomach upset or a vomiting is called Adhyatmikam. And a cloud burst or a earthquake or a tsunami is called Adi Daivikam. And, some violence, some firing, some hartal are all Adi Bhautikam. So the Shanti Mantra, so we say Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So our ancestors are saying that when we do some good things, we want to make sure there are no obstructions. We pray to the Lord, let everything be all right. So the Shanti Mantras also have some high thinking. Sahana Bhavatu, Sahano Bunaktu, Sahaviryang Karavavahe, Tejasvina Vadhitamastu, Mavidyushavahe. It's a very nice thought. Let's get together. Let's put our energy and vitality together. Let us exert, and the results let us share. If we have dvesha, mavidyushamahe. If we have dvesha, we'll cancel out. So let's do things together. So some good thoughts. It's like when we want to do something, they huddle and then they prepare their mind. It's exactly like that. The mantras are good. Badram karnebi shuniyama devaha. It's a good mantra. So good thoughts followed by Shanti Shanti Shanti. I mean, it's a nice way of saying let there not be any obstructions. Whatever task I want to do, let it happen without any obstruction. That's, I think, the idea behind chanting Shanti Mantra. Here's a question: can ladies study Vedas and Suktas? Can women learn and recite Vedas? Can females also do Sandhya Vandanam? So I have seen this question many times, and I have also thought about it many times. Now, under certain conditions, they can all do that before we go to that answer. So first of all, the answer is yes, there are in certain ways it can be done. But before answering there, we will actually add one more question to this. And that question is the question about chanting Veda, or is the question about how do a person, forget about the women here, it can be the other varnas also, all this also sometimes, with a certain kind of a practice, people bring all that together. So I think the question is, how do I evolve? How do I get liberation? How do I get mukti? And does that happen only if I chant Veda? Is another question I want to add also along with this, because we can take all of them together and answer. Now, if the question is, how do I, attain mukti? So there are different ways of attaining liberation and mukti. In chapter 9 of Bhagavad Gita, I think 27th shloka, 26th shloka also, Krishna has talked about it very nicely. Now the point is, let me tell you, we'll step aside from here for a moment. If you go into an organization, in the organization, not everybody can operate treasury. Not everybody can have a check signing authority. Not everybody can do everything. If you take finance, for example, so somebody must be a qualified chartered accountant, he should have domain knowledge, then only he'll be allowed to do the treasury operation, he'll be the authorized signatory and those kinds of things. And if somebody comes and says, can I also sign? Probably we will say no. In other words, what are we saying? We are saying the ancestors have put a certain kind of things which are to be done by somebody, and therefore that person should actually chant the Vedas. And in fact, if you go to a medical, if you go to a surgical theater, you cannot ask, can anybody give anesthesia? Can anybody take a knife and all that? No, it's not possible. So, in other words, so if somebody has to regularly chant Vedas, Suktas, and all that things, there is a whole ecosystem prescribed. It's called Vedic living, right? And if people are willing to do, in fact, I will go one step further and say there's a lot of people, even of the first Varna, who are not eligible, if you really ask me. Because without doing Trikala Sandhya Vandana, you cannot, touch Gayatri Chandasam Mata. Without doing Trikala Sandhya Vandana, this recitation has no meaning. In other words, I would still say, if people say, no, I want to chant, please chant. I have seen in some tea shops, morning to evening, that Gayatri Mantra is going on a continuous, cycle of recitation. Om Bhur Bhusa Tattva, that mantra is nice, music, it goes morning to evening. It has no vitality, it has no energy, it has no power. So that way, everybody can chant anything. And, that can be time pass, that can be a satisfaction of chanting and so on. I mean, this includes not just ladies. It includes people who don't follow, even the gents who don't follow. So therefore, who can chant Vedas? They must do Trikala Sandhya. There is a whole ecosystem which are prescribed. You should do a Vedic living, and in that part of it, if you chant Vedas, it has the intended effort, it has the vitality, it has the energy. Now, has ladies been able to do? Yes. But ladies have certain, the Prakriti is such, they have monthly sort of disturbances coming their way and so on. So once they are, after all that, perhaps they can. In the Vedic lore, we have found there are rishis, which means they have been put into a very strict regiment of this Vedic living. So those who are in the Vedic living perhaps will be able to do it. Now, on the other hand, the question is, I want to chant Vedas because I believe if only I chant Vedas, I will reach, liberation. I don't agree to that. I don't think it is required. There are lots of ways. Ye etha mam prapadyante tamstateva bhajamyaham mama vartman vartante manushya partha sarvasa. What Krishna says. He says, Ano Badra Kratavo Yantu Vishwataha is what Rigveda says. Right? So therefore, that is the charm of Sanatana Dharma. If you said that, you know, only if you chant Vedas, you can be special, you can, you know, liberate, then you have created a very exclusive thing. Sanatana Dharma can never be exclusive. It is very inclusive. It has put everything on the table, and it has put the roles and responsibilities in the society. And so in, you know, commensurate to all that, we should be able to do. Therefore, if you take that approach, if I read the question as an atanga that I am not able to chant Veda, I want to tell you, don't have that atanga. It's not, it is meaningless, it is not required. In fact, a lot of ladies can evolve much better than these gents without any kind of a Trikala Sanyamda. They are chanting Veda and all. It has no meaning. So that is the atanga that can be solved. But if this has to be done, there is a regimen, and that regimen has to be done in a particular way, and people are able to follow it. I think it is very much possible, and if you look at our Vedic times, that's how it has happened. So I think we have to be that kind of clarity we must develop, and depending upon that clarity, we will be able to take a position on these kinds of matters. Okay. What is happening? Okay. Yes.
राम राम एका विज्ञापना तत्र प्रायेण ध्वनिवर्धनं युतकस्य उपरि किञ्चित् घर्षणं भविष्यति इति मन्ये मैक् अस्ति किल युतकस्य उपरि किञ्चित् घर्षणम् अस्ति इति मन्ये किञ्चित् घर्षणं भवति इदानीं सम्यक् अस्ति
इदानीं
सम्यक् अस्ति अतीव सम्यक्
अस्तु ओके So we'll take some more questions on law of conservation of divinity. So there is a question which says each Purana praises a particular deity, which one to follow? A similar question, Sarvam Ishvara Rupam also, clear with the concept of only God instead of one God. But why then Vaishnava says the only God is Vishnu, Shaiva says only God is Shiva, likewise. If Sanatana Dharma is common to all, why divisions like Vaishnava, Shaiva, Sakti, and so on and so forth? Okay. So we will take a contemporary example to answer this. Now, let's say there are 10 different models of mobiles, and which model to actually buy? This is a question that I have. There are 10 different models of mobile available, and I have to decide which model to buy. So then the question is, how do we make a choice? So the point is, we will all make a choice. Somebody would buy a Moto, somebody will buy a Vivo or whatever, OnePlus, somebody will buy an iPhone and so on. But the point that all of them must understand is, whichever model of mobile you buy, the basic reason why you buy a mobile will not change by and large. Meaning, mobile is used for talking to people, maybe taking a photograph, sharing something. There is a certain functionality for which you buy a mobile, and all mobiles provide that functionality. Now the question is, then why did somebody buy Moto and somebody buy something else? It is simply because while the purpose is achieved, still people have their own small preferences here and there. Therefore, they gravitate towards one over the other. So this choice of which Purana, which deity, whether I should worship Lakshmi or Saraswati or Vishnu or Shaiva or Ganesha or all that, can differ from person to person. But the problem is that if we lose sight of the fact that all these are only a reflection of a certain preference that we have and certain affinity we develop towards one, but the purpose of all these, they are all one. They are all taking us to the same goal. If that sight is lost, then all these problems come. So therefore, if what is required is, of course, let people worship by Vishnu, but if they start saying all other gods are not there, only Vishnu is there, it merely shows their lack of understanding of this concept, that Sarvam Vishnumayam Jagat. It shows that their mind is not evolved. It is a work in progress. I think I want to tell you the Brahma Bhava and the Bheda Bhava. See, this is Bheda. This God is good, this God is not good, this God is superior, this God is not superior, and all those are called Bheda Bhava. The difference between Brahma Bhava and Bheda Bhava is actually the difference between day and night. When day is there, night cannot be there. When night is there, day cannot be there. When darkness is there, light will not be there. When light is there, that is a better way to say. When light is there, there will be no darkness. So therefore, they are two non-overlapping sets. We need to cross over from one side to the other. That is all required. That's why Shankaracharya did a great job of what is called Shan. He is a Shanmata Stapaka. He said, Adityam Ambikam Vishnum Gananatham cha Maheshwaram. Then he said Kaumaram also. He said, you worship whatever you want, but can put it in a very integrated way. It's called Shanmata Stapaka. This is all fine, but we should not have a Bheda Bhava. That means we are work in progress. So in North India, people use Ramcharitramanas for Ramayana instead of Valmiki Ramayana. Which one we should prefer? The answer is exactly the same. You have an intended purpose why you want to read Ramayana, and you decide whether Ramcharitamanas will be comfortable to you or Valmiki will be comfortable to you. If you make that choice which is very aligned to you, if you are very diligent in following it, we will reach the objective with which we started. So we don't have to really bother about whether we should read Ramcharitamanas or Valmiki Ramayana. This is the very charm of Sanatana Dharma. It provides room for everyone to do everything. But all of us must remember the goal is one. The highway is one. You may go on auto, I may go on a four-wheeler, somebody may go on a two-wheeler, but we all take a vehicle. The goal is the road is the same, and the destination is the same. I think that that thinking we should never lose sight of. So somebody took my example and asked, if divinity is everywhere, how to go about killing cockroaches or mosquitoes? Now I want to ask, why should we go about killing cockroaches and mosquitoes? To put it in a different way, if you seriously start believing in the law of conservation of divinity, now you should seriously believe it. It's not a piece of information to read and then time pass. If you felt Sarvam Vishnumayam Jagat Brahmadi Pipilikanta Tanuhu Prota Jagat Sakshini, I gave that shloka last time. Saivaham Nacha Drida Vastu iti Drida Prajnapi Esyasti Chet Chandalostu Satu Dujostu Guruhu Ityesha Manisha Mama. If that thought overpowers me, then the perspective will change. The first question you will ask is there a way I can avoid them coming, letting them inside my place of living? We will start making efforts like that. Rather than, see, today killing has become a habit. Killing cockroaches and mosquitoes and any sarva. But this is one problem with human beings. They will not coexist with any other living being. They'll finish them off, clean up the place, and then start. Somehow, this has gone into our mind because we have lost sight of law of conservation of divinity. If that thought overpowers us, then we will seriously start finding out ways and means by which we will avoid such a possibility. And in a very inevitable way, if we are doing it, we actually do it after a prayer. After a prayer in our heart that let me have less chances of whole perspective will change. I do not know whether we will stop killing cockroaches or mosquitoes, but we will not go about killing cockroaches or mosquitoes. That perspective will change. So that would be what I think about this. Then, can we even use the term mythology to describe our itihasas and puranas? So if you go and see what is the meaning of the word mythology or myth. Myth means fallacy. Myth means a non-existent thing. mythology means some supernatural things pertaining to a culture told long time back. These kinds of meanings are there. So if those meanings really are true, then I will not make use of the word mythology to describe itihasas and puranas. This is again this problem of English translation. This is again a problem of Westerners trying to find a word to use to describe ours. I would use only words itihasas and puranas. In fact, I have taken the word mythology out of my dictionary on these matters long back. To me, itihasa is not a mythology. It is, I firmly believe it has happened. Iti aha, that itihasa has a certain derivation actually. It was like that. That's the meaning of the word itihasa. So in this context, I am not comfortable using the word mythology. Okay. So somebody asked, you said one triplet for one shloka for the second triplet. What are the single shloka which covers the entire triplet of the first and the third? So very quickly, the triplet for the first 6 chapters is Karmanyeva Adhikaraha te ma paleshu kadachana ma karma pala heturbohu mato sangastu akarmani. This single shloka is expanded in the first 6 chapters. This is the message of the first triplet. Everything is only revolving around this. So this is the most important shloka. For the third triplet, this is the shloka. Purusha prakritisto hi bhungte prakritirjan gunan karanam guna sangosya sad asad yoni janmasu. In fact, this single shloka is expanded with a very vivid description of the trigunas. Because what is this shloka saying? It is saying the Purusha and the Prakriti are stuck with a gum called guna. So if you have to separate the Purusha and Prakriti, the guna has to dry. And if the guna has to dry, you have first to know what the guna is doing. That's what the entire third triplet of Bhagavad Gita is. So this is what is described in the third triplet of Bhagavad Gita. Because only when this gum called guna dries, the Purusha and Prakriti, Chit Jata Granthi, will loosen and the moksha will happen. So this is that shloka. Somebody asked about Sandhya Vandana. Can you give us some information on Sandhya Vandana and so on? I have actually written a book on Sandhya Vandana, a short book of about 70 pages. It is available in Poti, which is on-demand printing. If you are interested, you can pick up that book and then read it for yourself. There are several questions on karma, rebirth, punishments, etc., etc. We will take all these today. Partly it will start today and it will go on in the next class also. So I think all these we will do. Okay. So I thought since last 2 weeks we didn't have, I had a slightly extended time for question and answers today. So with this, we will close this.